It started on a rainy Tuesday morning. Nora, a 29-year-old elementary school teacher, was jogging through the park like she did every week. But that day, something made her slow down. Beneath the bridge, just behind the row of scraggly shrubs, sat a man wrapped in layers of mismatched clothes. He wasn't panhandling or asking for help. He just sat still, his eyes closed, gripping an old photograph as though it were the only thing keeping him grounded. Nora jogged past him, but his image stuck with her the whole day. The next morning, he was still there, same spot, same position, same photo clutched in his hands. This time, Nora brought an extra sandwich. She hesitated, then approached. "Hey," she said softly, holding it out. The man opened his eyes. They were clearer than she expected, alert, sad, and startlingly intelligent. "Thank you," he said. His voice was calm and polite. "Name's Adam." She nodded, not asking questions, and jogged away. The next day, it was coffee. After a week, their brief exchanges became routine. Adam never shared much, only saying he'd fallen on hard times after losing his job and someone close to him. He never begged or made excuses. Nora found herself looking forward to those few quiet minutes with him. Something about his presence felt grounded, human. Against her better judgment, after 2 weeks, she offered him the studio apartment above her garage. It had a private entrance and bathroom, and she wasn't using it for anything but storage. Adam refused at first. She insisted. "Just until you find your feet," she said. He finally agreed, with a humility that made her heart twist. Her fiancé, Caleb, didn't share her enthusiasm. "Letting a complete stranger live behind our house? Are you serious?" he said, folding his arms. Nora sighed. "He's harmless. Just needs a break. It's not permanent." Caleb rubbed his face and muttered something about her bleeding heart getting her in trouble one day. Adam moved in that night with a single duffel bag and his photo. He kept to himself, was respectful, clean, and quiet. Every evening, he thanked her as if she'd saved his life. Maybe she had. She didn't realize that by letting him in, she'd just invited a storm that would change everything. In the weeks that followed, Adam proved to be the kind of tenant most landlords dream of. He kept the studio spotless, paid a modest rent as soon as he landed a part-time job at a local auto shop, and never intruded. Nora saw him now and then, sometimes in the mornings, sometimes returning late with grease on his hands and that same quiet gratitude in his eyes. He even helped her fix a leaky faucet and reorganize the cluttered shed without being asked. She tried to wave it off as neighborly kindness, but part of her felt he was repaying her in ways words couldn't capture. Still, Caleb remained uneasy. He barely acknowledged Adam and avoided him like a shadow. When Nora brought it up, Caleb would shrug. "It's just weird. I don't know him, and now he's living 10 steps from our back door." She tried to reassure him, but something lingered in Caleb's tone, an edge not quite jealousy, but not far from it. At first, she thought it was just Caleb being overprotective, but the tension between them grew. Nora began to notice other things. Caleb coming home later, more distracted than usual, brushing off wedding details she was excited about. "Work's insane," he said. "The merger's a mess." She believed him, or at least told herself she did. But it was Adam who noticed first. One morning, as Nora walked out with her lesson plans in hand, Adam stopped her. "He's been different lately, hasn't he?" he asked gently. She paused. "What do you mean?" He gave a small, understanding smile. "You're kind. Sometimes that makes you overlook things others can't." She didn't know how to respond. "I don't want to overstep," he added, "but I know what it looks like when someone's hiding something." She laughed it off, but unease crept in. That night, she brought it up again with Caleb. "You've been distant." "It's work," he snapped. "Why are you suddenly acting paranoid?" She backed down, but her mind raced. Why did Caleb seem to flinch whenever Adam's name came up? Why did Adam always seem like he knew more than he let on? One night, while folding laundry, she found a forgotten envelope in the back of a drawer Caleb used for loose change and receipts. It was unsealed and empty except for a tiny corner of a photograph stuck inside. She tugged it out. It was torn, but she could see Caleb, much younger, his arm around a woman who looked familiar in the way strangers sometimes do. The woman was pregnant. The date scribbled in the corner said it was from 6 years ago. Her stomach twisted. She didn't know who the woman was, but something told her Adam did. The photo haunted Nora all night. She turned it over again and again, as though some hidden truth would rise from the paper. The woman had soft eyes and a kind smile, and Caleb looked different, lighter, younger. There was a tenderness in the way he held her, his hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. That image didn't match the Caleb she knew, the one who flinched at emotion and dodged intimacy with sarcasm. The next morning, she slipped the photo into her bag and headed to work, but her thoughts were a haze. Her students' laughter barely registered. During lunch, she pulled out her phone and searched for clues. She scanned Caleb's old social media, scrolled through college photos, but found nothing with the woman from the photo. No name, no tags, no trace. That night, she found herself walking to Adam's studio. She hadn't seen him in 2 days. When he opened the door, she was struck by how tired he looked. "I need to ask you something," she said. He stepped aside silently, letting her in. She handed him the photo. "Do you know her?" Adam's face changed, just for a moment. A flicker of pain, then calm. "Yes," he said quietly. "She was my sister." Nora's breath caught. "And Caleb? He was her boyfriend. Promised her everything. Said he'd be there. Said he'd raise the baby with her." He sat down heavily. Then one day, he disappeared. Changed numbers. Blocked her. She called and called. No answer. Nora's heart was pounding. What happened to her? "She died during childbirth," Adam said, voice steady. "The baby survived. I tried to take him in, but I didn't have the money or stability. He went into foster care." Nora sat on the edge of the worn-out chair. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I wasn't sure you'd believe me," he said. "And I needed to be sure you were who I thought you were. That you'd care about the truth." She pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Why now?" "Because you deserve to know before you marry him." Nora left in silence. That night, Caleb came home early, flowers in hand, trying to play the doting fiancé. She couldn't even look at him. She held up the photo. "Is this her?" He paused, swallowed. "Where did you get that?" "Just answer the question." His voice dropped. "It was a long time ago." "Was the baby yours?" she asked. He hesitated. "I don't know." "She died, Caleb. In childbirth." That silenced him. His shoulders slumped. "I didn't think she'd actually. I thought she was bluffing. I was scared." "So you ran?" He didn't respond. She turned away from him, her world tilting on its axis. The man she was about to marry had abandoned a pregnant woman, and now there was a child out there, possibly his, definitely alone. Nora barely slept that night. Her mind spun with questions, half-formed plans, and a rising ache in her chest that felt a lot like betrayal. She stared at the ceiling in the dark, Caleb's faint snores from the next room like a distant storm warning. By morning, the decision was made. She called her mother and canceled their cake tasting. Then the florist. Then the photographer. She didn't tell Caleb. She needed space to think, to breathe, to find a grip on the truth before facing him again. At work, she walked through the motions like a ghost. Her students' drawings of sunshine and stick figures felt like glimpses into a world she no longer belonged to. During lunch, she found herself scrolling foster care sites in the region. It was like looking for a ghost in the fog, no names, just files, initials, and guarded descriptions. That evening, she went back to Adam's place. He opened the door before she knocked, as if he'd been expecting her. "Do you know where he is?" she asked. "The child?" Adam nodded slowly. "He's in a group home 2 towns over. I visit sometimes. He's 3 now. Quiet. Sweet. Loves puzzles." Nora's eyes filled with tears. "I want to meet him." Adam studied her for a long moment, then gave a gentle nod. "I'll call the caseworker." Caleb didn't come home that night. He didn't text or call. For the first time, she didn't care. The next afternoon, Nora drove with Adam to the foster home. It was a modest building with faded paint and a plastic playground in the back. Inside, the air smelled like crayons and macaroni. A tired-looking woman greeted them and led them to the playroom. And there he was, a little boy with messy brown curls, sitting alone on the floor with a wooden puzzle. When he looked up, Nora felt something shift inside her. His eyes were round and uncertain, but they were Caleb's. There was no denying it. Her breath caught in her throat. Adam crouched beside him. "Hey, buddy. Brought someone to meet you." The boy clutched the puzzle piece and looked up at her cautiously. "Hi," she whispered, kneeling. "I'm Nora." He blinked, then returned to his puzzle. Adam chuckled. "He needs time." That night, she dreamed of lullabies and laughter that didn't feel like her own. In the morning, Caleb returned home, pale and nervous. "Where were you?" she asked. "I needed space," he said. "I didn't know what to do." She stared at him. "There's a child, Caleb." "Your child? Did you know that?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I guessed, but I wasn't ready." "You still aren't," she said. "I want to see him. He's beautiful, and I think I'm going to adopt him." Caleb's eyes widened. "You're what?" "He deserves better. He deserves someone who won't walk away." Caleb didn't argue. He just sat down, defeated. Nora walked to the window, hands trembling. Outside, the sky was turning gold with the setting sun. Her wedding was in 3 days. Nora stood in her kitchen, holding her wedding dress by the hanger, staring at it like it belonged to someone else. 3 days left, and everything felt like a farce. The beaded ivory fabric, the delicate lace she once swooned over, now seemed like a costume in a play she no longer wanted to role in. She hung it back up in the closet and sat on the bed, fingers knotted tightly in her lap. Caleb stayed quiet that evening, hovering near the doorway like he didn't know how to exist in the same space anymore. He asked nothing about the child, offered no apology, no redemption, just silence. The man she once thought she would spend forever with now felt like a stranger who'd borrowed someone else's charm. The next morning, Adam stopped by. He had a folder in hand. Paperwork, he explained, that could begin the process of adoption if she was serious. Nora nodded. I am. They sat at the dining table and went through it all together. Background checks, income statements, personal references. She hesitated over the final line. Relationship status. Do I mark single? She asked softly. Adam looked at her. Are you? She let out a breath. I think I always was. That night, she sent a message to all her bridesmaids. Wedding is still on, but things have changed. Please come with open hearts. She didn't elaborate. She wasn't sure she could explain it yet. Caleb, for his part, remained passive. When she told him the wedding would go ahead, he seemed confused, even relieved. So, we're still doing this? He asked. Yes, she replied. But her voice lacked warmth. He didn't notice. He never did. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was brilliantly blue, the kind that made everything feel cinematic. Nora dressed without help. Her mother dabbed her eyes. The guests arrived. Chairs lined the backyard beneath the willow tree they once picked out together. A string quartet played softly. Caleb stood at the altar, wearing a tailored navy suit, looking like he'd won. Nora walked down the aisle slowly, her bouquet trembling slightly in her hands. She saw the guests rise. She saw Caleb smile nervously. She saw her future stretch before her like a bridge made of thin glass. And then, just as the officiant began to speak, a calm but firm voice rang out from the back. I object. The music stopped. Heads turned. Gasps spread like fire. Nora turned too, and there stood Adam, in a dark suit, holding something in his hand. A photo. The same photo. You can't marry him, he said. He's not who you think he is. Caleb's face drained of color. Nora didn't move. Tell them, Caleb, Adam said. Tell them who Lily was. Tell them about your son. The silence felt like an eternity. Then Caleb finally spoke, his voice barely audible. I thought she was bluffing. I didn't know she'd actually die. The guests murmured. Nora felt her knees weaken. But she didn't cry. Not anymore. The hush over the crowd was suffocating. Guests exchanged awkward glances, unsure whether to sit, to stand, or to pretend they hadn't just witnessed a public unraveling. The officiant stood frozen, eyes wide, the ceremony script clutched uselessly in his hands. Nora remained still at the altar, her bouquet at her side, grip loosening with each second. Adam stepped closer, calm but resolute. Her name was Lily, he said to the stunned audience. She was kind and bright, and stupidly in love with a man who promised her the world. He left her 6 months into the pregnancy, stopped answering calls, blocked her number, told her he wasn't ready. She died giving birth to a boy who looks exactly like the man standing beside you. Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it again. There were no excuses that could hold in this moment. Why didn't you tell me this? Nora's voice was brittle, sharp. You let me plan a wedding while you carried this lie in your pocket like spare change. Caleb took a step toward her. I thought I could move on. I didn't think it would matter. Didn't matter? Her voice cracked. You left a child behind. A woman died. And you thought I'd never find out. The guests had gone silent, stunned by the rawness, the grief clawing through every word. You have a son, Caleb. He's in foster care. Caleb ran a hand over his face, looking more like a boy caught in a lie than a man. What do you want me to say? Nothing, she whispered. There's nothing left to say. She turned away from him. The bouquet slipped from her hands, hitting the grass with a dull thud. You can all go home, she said to the crowd. There won't be a wedding today. Adam stepped beside her, offering nothing but quiet support. The guests slowly dispersed, unsure where to look, murmuring apologies and awkward goodbyes. Caleb stood alone at the altar, the weight of silence surrounding him. That evening, the decorations were taken down, chairs folded, food packed away. Nora sat on her porch with a blanket around her shoulders, staring out at the twilight. Adam sat beside her, saying nothing until she finally spoke. Thank you. He looked over. For what? For telling me. For not letting me make the biggest mistake of my life. He nodded. You saved my sister's memory today. That's worth everything. She sighed, exhaustion deep in her bones. I want to visit the boy again. I want to see if I can adopt him. Adam smiled faintly. He'd be lucky to have you. Nora looked out into the darkening yard. The tree lights had gone out. The decorations were gone. But something else had taken root in her, something real. Not a romance or a fantasy. Something grounded. Something honest. The following week passed in a blur of forms, phone calls, and quiet afternoons filled with reflection. Nora had told her parents everything. What Caleb had done, who Adam really was, and what she now hoped to do. Her mother had cried softly, more out of pride than grief. "That boy needs someone," she said. "And I think you've just found your calling." The next visit to the foster center felt different. Nora brought a stuffed elephant, not sure if he'd even care. But when she knelt beside the boy and held it out, he reached for it without hesitation. "He remembered you," the caseworker said softly. "That's rare." Nora glanced at Adam, who watched from a distance, smiling faintly. She didn't want to rush anything. There were still interviews, background checks, a home study. But each time she visited, she saw more of him. A gentle resilience in the way he clutched her hand, a spark of trust in his shy glances. She started setting up the guest room with bright sheets and new toys. She donated her wedding dress. Caleb tried texting once, just a vague apology. She didn't even answer. He never showed his face again. It was as if, once unmasked, he no longer had the will to pretend. Adam came by one evening with a small wooden box. "It was Lily's," he said. Inside were photos, letters, and a tiny pair of blue baby socks. Nora read every letter, each word like a whispered memory. Lily had loved Caleb. She believed in him, even when he began pulling away. Her final note was unfinished, a scribble in the corner. "I hope our son knows joy." That line stuck with Nora for days. She carried it with her like a mission statement. She didn't know if she'd ever find romantic love again. But this boy could know joy, and she could be the one to give it. Nora officially filed for adoption 2 weeks later. The process wasn't easy. There were background checks, home inspections, and hours of interviews. But through it all, she felt steady, anchored by purpose. Every time she felt doubt creeping in, she would revisit the foster center and spend time with the little boy. His name was Jacob. He was slow to speak, but quick to observe, always watching her closely as if trying to decide if she was real, if she was permanent. She brought puzzles, coloring books, and once, a toy truck that lit up and made siren noises. He smiled at that, a full, unfiltered smile that made her heart feel like it could lift her off the ground. Adam came with her sometimes, but always stayed in the background. One day, Nora asked, "Would you want to be part of his life once I adopt him?" He didn't answer right away. "Only if it's okay with you. I don't want to confuse him." She looked over at Jacob, who was trying to fit a square block into a round hole. "I think he deserves to know the good people connected to his mother, and I think you're one of them." Adam looked like he wanted to say more, but didn't. Instead, he just nodded, eyes glossy. The day she got the approval letter, Nora cried for 10 full minutes. Not because she was scared, but because for the first time in months, she felt whole again. She went to the center with cupcakes and balloons. Jacob didn't fully understand what was happening, but when she said, "You're coming home with me now," he hugged her legs tightly and didn't let go. That night, the house felt different. Alive. She tucked Jacob into his new bed and read him a story twice because he kept asking for again. When he finally fell asleep, she sat outside the room and wept, not out of sadness, but out of love. Real, raw, unshakable love. Life settled into a new rhythm. Mornings began with cereal on Jacob's chin and cartoons playing softly while Nora packed lunches. Afternoons were filled with daycare pickups, tiny shoes lost under the couch, and little hands reaching up for comfort after small tumbles. It wasn't easy, nothing about single motherhood ever is, but Nora never once questioned the path she had chosen. Each bedtime story, every giggle, each whispered "Mommy" stitched something whole in her heart. Adam visited often, always arriving with something small for Jacob, a toy car, a new book, a drawing Lily had once made. Jacob didn't call him uncle, but the bond was growing. Quietly, naturally. Adam never overstepped. He came when invited, left when asked, and never made anything about himself. One Saturday, after Jacob had gone to sleep, Adam stayed a little longer. They sat on the porch, the silence between them soft. "You've given him something I thought he might never have," Adam said. Nora turned to him. I couldn't let him grow up thinking no one wanted him." Adam smiled. "You didn't just want him. You chose him. That matters." She sipped her tea and asked quietly, "Do you ever think about finding someone again?" He looked down at his hands. "Sometimes. But my heart's been in a kind of repair mode for a while now." She nodded. "Same." A long pause followed. Then he stood. "Thank you, Nora, For everything you've done, for Lily, for him, for me. She watched him walk away, a sense of peace blooming quietly in her chest. There was no romance, no pressure, just respect, mutual healing. That night, Jacob called out in his sleep. Nora rushed in. He stirred, eyes half open. "You're still here," he mumbled. "Always," she whispered, brushing hair from his forehead. And in that moment, she knew she'd never needed a wedding or a perfect man. All she'd ever needed was this: purpose, peace, and someone to hold close when the world got too loud. The seasons began to shift, and with them, so did the energy in Nora's home. What was once a quiet space filled with hesitation and loss had become vibrant and warm, walls lined with Jacob's crayon art, closets stuffed with little sneakers and superhero pajamas, mornings filled with pancakes and accidental spills. The emptiness had been replaced with joy, and though some evenings were still hard, Nora no longer felt alone. One morning, as she packed Jacob's lunch for preschool, she found a folded piece of paper in his backpack. A drawing. It showed 3 stick figures, one taller woman with a brown ponytail, one man with a baseball cap, and one small boy holding both their hands. Above it, scribbled in blocky letters, were the words, "My family." Nora held the paper to her chest for a long moment, tears gathering. That afternoon, she showed it to Adam. He smiled, touched the paper gently, and said, "He sees us. Just like this." Their bond continued to deepen, not in a romantic sense, but in something possibly more profound. They coexisted in a space of trust, both shaped by the same tragedy but finding redemption through the same child. Then one day, something unexpected happened. While at the park, a woman approached them. Middle-aged, composed, professional. "Excuse me," she said, glancing at Jacob. "I'm from Child Services." Nora tensed. "Is something wrong?" The woman smiled softly. "Not at all. But we've recently been contacted by a relative of Jacob's biological father. He's requesting a meeting." Nora's stomach dropped. "Caleb, after all this time, is he trying to take him?" she asked. "No. Legally, he signed away his parental rights months ago. But he wants to speak with you. Privately." That night, Nora sat on her porch for hours, wrestling with whether to agree. What could Caleb possibly want now? Regret? Redemption? Forgiveness? Adam said only one thing: "You don't owe him anything, but if you do meet him, do it on your terms." Nora agreed to meet Caleb, but only in a public place, during the day, and without Jacob. They chose a quiet cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions and the coffee always came in mismatched mugs. When she arrived, Caleb was already there, seated at a corner table, looking older than she remembered. His hair was thinner, his suit slightly wrinkled, his eyes tired. He stood as she approached, but she didn't offer a hug or even a handshake. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. She sat, arms folded. "What do you want, Caleb?" He sighed. "I heard you adopted him. I wanted to see you. To say, I don't know. Something. You knew about him this whole time," she said. "You never asked. You never cared." "I did care," he said quickly. "But I was ashamed. I didn't think I had the right. After everything." "You didn't," she said flatly. "You still don't?" He swallowed hard, nodded. "I know. Look, I've started therapy. I've left the city. I think about Lily every day. About what I did. What I didn't do." "It doesn't change what happened," she said. "No," he admitted. "But I wanted to tell you that what you've done, raising him, it's the one good thing left from all of this. And I'm grateful, even if I don't deserve to be." For a moment, the tension between them softened, not into forgiveness, but into quiet recognition of shared loss. "Are you planning to ever come back into his life?" she asked. Caleb shook his head. "No. I think the best thing I can do is stay away. Let him grow without my shadow." She nodded, stood. "Then let that be the last thing you ever give him. A clean slate." As she walked out, the weight on her chest lifted. She hadn't forgiven him, but she had faced him. And that, in its own way, was enough. When she got home, Jacob was waiting at the window. "Where'd you go, Mommy?" he asked. She scooped him into her arms. "Just took care of something old, so I could come back to something new." Months passed, and spring began to paint the town in soft greens and bursts of tulips. Nora's life had found its rhythm. Early mornings, sticky breakfast fingers, bedtime stories reread 3 times, and weekends filled with sidewalk chalk and tire swings. Jacob was thriving. He laughed more easily now, sang nonsense songs at the top of his lungs, and fell asleep clutching the same stuffed elephant she'd once nervously brought on a foster visit. One afternoon, Nora received a small envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photograph. It was Lily, younger, smiling as she held a tiny baby blanket in front of her. Written on the back in delicate script, "Thank you for giving him the life I dreamed of." Nora pressed it to her heart and whispered, "He'll always know." That evening, Adam stopped by, holding Jacob's favorite snack and a stack of new books. After Jacob had been tucked in, they sat on the porch as the sun slipped behind the trees. "He's getting taller," Adam said. "He's starting to ask more questions," Nora replied. "About his mom. About who she was." Adam's eyes softened. "When the time is right, I'll tell him. Everything. The truth, but the good parts too." Nora nodded. "He deserves all of it. The beauty and the pain." A quiet breeze rolled through, stirring the wind chimes. She turned to Adam. "You know, we built something here, didn't we? Not the way I planned, but maybe better. You gave a boy a home," he said. "And you gave your sister's son a future," she replied. He smiled, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Just the creak of the rocking chair and the distant hum of cicadas. Nora reached for the drawing Jacob had made weeks ago, the one with 3 stick figures holding hands. She pinned it to the fridge that night and stood back, looking at it like it was a masterpiece. Because to her it was. A life built not from perfection, but from choice. From truth. From love in its purest, most unexpected form. And that was more than enough.